Namaskar. Monday nights are Abhijit nights, and as always, we have our guest waiting and ready to answer all your questions. We have a few questions from our last hangout, and we'll start with those right away. Abhijit, Namaskar, and Sri Ganeshaya Namaha.
Veil, Vetrivel.
So here we are setting a tug of war between two brothers. I'm saying Ganesha and you are saying Kartikeya. Let's see what happens. Okay, first question from last week from Raman Girish. What's your opinion in Praveen Sani's defense analyst of Force magazine?
You
You
already
answered this.
asked me this
He
question.
answered this question. Okay, next one. Sandeep. Why Perestroika failed but Deng Xiaoping succeeded?
Very simple, good question. See, Perestroika was about the kind of political openness, glasnost and perestroika, where about first glasnost was about political openness and then perestroika was about reforms in an era where Gorbachev confused the power of the state with the openness of dialogue and freedom of speech. You can have free speech, but you can't just abdicate your responsibility as a state. Deng Xiaoping understood that very well, which is why he carried out Tiananmen Square. Right? So he was very clear that I'm going to give freedoms to people, especially after Mao Zedong's horrible tyranny. But the moment that freedom became too much, where you're threatening the party and the state, he crushed mercilessly. This was part one. Part two, carrying on from the stupidity of Gorbachev, and Gorbachev really was a stupid man. I mean, make no mistake about it. As in, he succumbed to Western propaganda. Not the first chap too. Dmitry Medvedev also succumbed to Western propaganda, and before that, Catherine the Great's husband, Tsar Peter or Paul, I forget, also succumbed to it. They went in for the services method. The IMF told them you should focus on services, not industry, and so they missed modernizing all their industry. At that time, the Soviet Union had a much higher per capita income than China. China said, screw you to the IMF. They said, we're not following your advice. We're not going to go in for services. We're going to go in for industry. And look where they are today. Russia could have been that China, but they went. And that was that.
Thank you. Satish Chandra wants to know, who do you think has been India's best foreign minister so far and why?
To my recollection, really nobody.
How about
Because see, the
Jaswant Singh?
problem, not really, no. I'll tell you why. Because whenever our foreign policy has been effective, it's been micromanaged from the Prime Minister's office. When it's not been effective, you've usually had a person who doesn't have much of a say in the PMO. Jaswant Singh was one of those unusual times where he had a great deal of personal power because Atal Bihari Vajpayee trusted him implicitly. But it was again a run-of-the-mill foreign ministry. The critical reforms that were required and things like that never happened. The focus on primary emphasis gathering, turning your foreign service into your primary intelligence collection service, your primary liaison service, all of that never happened.
Abhijit, can I make a personal comment? I have seen the MEA, at least from the embassies and consulates, they are a lot more receptive from 2014 onwards. I mean, my hat's off to them. I'm not saying everything they do is great, but they have been a lot more, positive, proactive in reaching out to the diaspora here and trying to engage them, take them along. They've done a lot. From 2014, I've seen a sea change in the way they have handled that part. Hats off to them. Let's go to the next question, please.
Well, it's very curious because most of my NRI friends say the exact opposite. So it seems like it's a personal.
You see, दो हाथ से बजती है ताली, भाई साहब. दो हाथ से बजती है ताली. So
no, these aren't these aren't the not two hand tali types. So that's never been the problem out here.
Anyway, next question, please. Vishwa Pramod wants to know, does India need a doctrinal basis for its foreign policy? We have no clarity on what principles does it rest upon, and its institutional framework is also quite fragile, scattered around.
Yeah, very good question, Vishwa. Yes, you need doctrinal, but you also need discipline. Okay, right now you are completely understaffed. There are no basic methodologies required for reports. There is no depth of information. There is no specialization, etc., etc., etc. Information gathering, the methodology of information gathering, the forced handing over of contacts to your successor, and all of that never happens the way it does in the West. You look at most of the embassies in Delhi, the follow on political attaché or military attaché will come a month prior, and the serving one will take them around, introduce them to everybody, and things like that, and then the guy leaves for his next post. We don't do that. So it's really screwed up the way it's run. So it's an administrative problem, and of course, yes, there is the fundamental lack of clarity and things like that. See, you have these slogans, Vishwaguru, Atmanirbhar Bharat, but what does it translate to in practical terms? Nothing. So you need that doctrinal clarity. Who is enemy number one? You don't have to say it out loud. You don't have to say China is enemy number one, Pakistan is enemy number two, or Pakistan is enemy number one, China is enemy number two. But you need to have that clarity internally, no? You don't even have that. The third is a problem of discipline. I know for a fact that many of these Indian UN diplomats who go around giving speeches at the UN condemning Pakistan that Twitterati and the press go gaga over, they're the most vicious liberals in private. I've literally seen an Indian UN representative go around telling people in New York that India is run by a fascist government. Now, what do you do? So even that basic auditing and disciplining and monitoring, even that isn't there. The clarity of doctrine, the clarity of purpose, when your government itself doesn't have it, how is a bureaucrat going to have it? So there are lots of issues at play out here.
Our next question from Ben Dover. Will IoT security be a rewarding career for a California STEM undergrad and an aspiring cyber coolie?
IoT?
Internet of Things.
Well, I mean, if you want to become some faceless guy hiding somewhere, look, I don't know if it's a rewarding career. It'll pay you money.
Since the question is also directed at me, I'll give you my 2 cents. Ben, one of the things that is really, really hot right now is cybersecurity. And the cybersecurity became hot because over the period of last 25 years, many serious software companies started using open source code. And open source code, by its definition, is going to be open and anybody can take a look at it. And thus, anybody who sees a little bit of vulnerability can exploit that vulnerability. And you see now companies like SolarWind, which is like a security layer in your network stack, and that is pretty much everywhere a network goes, which means everywhere. And they had some vulnerabilities, and those are the ones that supposedly Russians and then, of course, North Korea / China have exploited, and that meant that many companies in the Fortune 500 got affected. So these kinds of things are takes time to take out all this stuff, and that's why cybersecurity is hard today. As far as IoT security is concerned, it's just part of that. I think it's got a bright future.
But still, the question is, you asked, is it a rewarding career? Are you going to have a work-life balance and things like that? Are you going to grow intellectually? I don't know. I suspect not.
Yeah, I guess not. I mean, if you want more money, you're going to spend more time at work. These days, everybody is working remote, which means pretty much your eyes open, you are being on call, and then you just drop at the evening because you're too tired. That's how life is. You get paid a lot, and you'll have to force yourself to take vacations, and try and discover life along the way. Good luck. Next question from Saumi. Is Indian government's policy of keeping mum on Taiwan, Tibet, and Xinjiang correct, or should we go on the offensive and raise these topics?
Look, we need to be raising these topics everywhere. The question is, how strong does your government feel? The problem is, in many ways, they are compromised, but they pass off their compromise as national security, because the constant thing they'll tell you is, if we bring all of this, we are not going to become a UN Security Council member, permanent member. I am telling you right now, China will not allow you to become a UN Security Council permanent member, come what may. Okay, so it's basically necessity masquerading as virtue.
Next question, Ed Sedna. What should young Indians working in dead-end jobs in MNCs do for those who can't afford to study abroad, considering our education skills that we have acquired?
I don't understand. Working in dead-end jobs in MEC, why should they do anything? It's not your job to be doing anything unless you want to set up something like a new university or something like that in America, bringing over people from India, because in India you're bogged down by all kinds of things. Tell me something, why is it that someone like Barry Weiss is able to overnight join with Jordan Peterson and Douglas Murray and people like that and set up the University of Austin, and Indians who have disproportionate income power and things like that are not willing to do that for their own people out there? Do that if you can do that. But when you say dead-end jobs in MNC, I really don't know, because if you're in a dead-end job in an MNC, you clearly don't have the spine to stand up for yourself or create anything new.
Munish Rathi wants to know, Abhijit, please look into Dashansh initiative. They seem to be a potential answer to Zakat. Please let us know if it's worth anything.
What?
Dashansh. I think it's 10%.
What is Yakat?
Zakat is 10%. I think the Islam requires you to pay 10%, isn't it, of your salary? Zakat.
Yeah, I don't get into all these things. I'm not going to look up this Dashanchi.
We'll skip this. Next question. Subramaniam M. member. MK Gandhi has always been proud and unabashed about his Hindu identity, but his followers over the last 70 years are ashamed to be called Hindu. Why?
Because Mohandas could always monetize his Hinduism. He could weaponize it. His followers haven't been able to weaponize it, because the political reality changed. It was that simple. You needed a conman, godman to take you a certain direction, because India will always fall for these conmen, godmen. That's what he did. It didn't work after that, so it's fine. Realities change. People's political requirements change. And nobody was really interested in independence till it was wrapped up out in a pseudo-religious movement. His thing was, you needed a Muslim pseudo-religious movement and a Hindu pseudo-religious movement. His Hindu pseudo-religious movement took off fine. Everybody was willing to accept that he was some holy person, when in fact he was absolute pervert. He tried to do it with the Muslims and he created Pakistan. I mean, his starting of the Khilafat movement was the same attempt to pull off a con job on Muslims. It tells you a lot that Muslims are smart enough not to fall for his BS and Hindus were.
Krishna Raj, how can freeing temples help?
I have a whole podcast on this. I'm not going to answer this separately.
Where was that broadcast, Abhijit?
It's called The End of Hinduism. Just Google End of Hinduism on Kushal's this thing.
Yeah, good. Next question, please. Nebuchadnezzar, hi to both. Enjoyed my Pondi trip and Chettinad food. Skipped Chennai due to rains. Question, what is the role of MGR in Tamil politics? I could see railway, bus, metro stations named after him.
Well, he broke the DMK's hold on politics. That was the main thing. So look, it was a mixed bag. He did bring in a lot of populist measures that helped people. Like, old people got free medical care. They used to get 1 or 2 square meals free. What was it? 1 meal a day or 2 meals a day?
Yeah, yeah. I
Something
think
like
one,
that.
one one meal a day, because that's why
One
they
meal a
keep
day.
yeah.
Yeah. They got a shelter over their heads. He improved the quality of schools. As in, he actually ensured that people were teaching in those schools and things like that, the midday meal scheme and things like that. In terms of populism, it was very, very good, but it was a responsible populism in the sense that it actually reached out to the people. His economic management, well, that left a lot to be desired. Jayalalitha ultimately followed that, but he was also, in a sense, you can say that DMK, in a sense, cheapened Tamil politics. It used to be about high culture, it came to be about name calling. And in that sense, I guess MGR and the DMK took it further down to the filmy uh, arena in that sense.
I have one small thing to add. In the 1940s, and right through the independence movement and the early independence days, MJR used to wear khadar, and once he wanted to join the Congress party, and someone fairly high up in Congress party took him to meet the then leader Kamraj. And not only did he refuse entry, he yelled at this person who brought MGR along and said, "Why are you bringing Kutadis into the party?" Kutadi means somebody who sings and dances. So imagine if MGR had been part of Congress, what could have happened? Anyway, just one of those things would have, could have. Aditya wants to know, can you please explain how fuel price hikes are decided? How is the government responsible? With current price conditions, how could the government fix this?
Look, fuel prices are decided the way taxes, cesses, and all those things are decided. The government decides it has revenue targets to meet, so it carifies it. If you think there is some serious, meticulous accounting process that measures second order effects, third order effects, knock on effects of inflation, X, Y, Z, it does not. They very frequently deploy their chamchas and clowns to say, oh, we're actually doing this to make electric vehicles more marketable, this, that, complete rubbish. If you actually talk to people in government, you realize they haven't thought through squat. Okay, this is entirely a revenue target based this thing, where somebody in government decides, this is a way that we can meet this expenditure, and we will increase prices. They don't do any very fine, delicate calculations and things like that. No.
Next question, again, Aditya. Who are your top three favorite Roman emperors and why? If you have non-Roman favorites, please mention them too.
Ooh, that is a good question. It's such a complicated question. Um, I'd have to say my favorite Roman emperors would be Caligula, Aurelian, not Marcus Aurelius, Aurelian, and Gallienus. And why? Because Gallienus's military reforms saved the empire, Aurelian stabilized the empire, and Caligula because, well, he was just plain mad, which is awesome thing to be. Though Elgabalus was also mad. He's sometimes called Heliogabalus. He was the only, well, he was one of three Arabs to become, as in ethnically Arab people to become Roman emperor. From Al Gabal, the Arab word Al Gabal. It was the local solar deity, the Surya Deva, in somewhere in Syria, and well, he because the Romans didn't focus on ethnicity as much as they did. If you spoke Latin and wore Latin and behaved Latin, you were Latin. So that's how they treated you, and he became emperor. So he would be a close uh, fourth simply because of what a complete lunatic, murderous lunatic he was. I love murderous lunatics, by the way. Least favorite emperors would be, let's see, Trajan, Hadrian, and Tiberius. Tiberius, because he was clumsy and he set the stage for the massive lack of stability that followed for almost 100 years after his death. Trajan and Hadrian, because they are all celebrated as being these great emperors, they essentially expanded the empires to the point where its collapse became inevitable. Classic case of imperial overextension. Essentially, Trajan and Hadrian were what Aurangzeb was in India. Aurangzeb, if you look at him, the Mughal Empire was just a empire that was restricted to the northern Indo-Gangetic plains. It was Aurangzeb that brought it into the Deccan, but he also set the roots for the empire's collapse, and that's exactly what Trajan and Hadrian did. Overextended, overexpanded, and they set the roots for its collapse. Now you will have people like Audrey Trusky telling you that Aurangzeb is a great emperor for one set of reasons. You will have people like us saying he was a horrible bigot for another set of reasons. But essentially, Aurangzeb, except in terms of religious tolerance, was exactly like Hadrian and Trajan in terms of imperial overexpansion.
Is the Indus Valley Civilization one of the very few examples of a successful socialist/communist utopia?
Yeah, so we think so. We're not too sure, but because we don't know what the writing is, but it sure looks like it, doesn't it? It was definitely one of the only, not one of, it was the only high-end state that India has ever produced. In terms of standardization, in terms of planning, in terms of civic architecture, in terms of public goods and services, in terms of a focus on the people, etc., etc., etc. Yes. Now, was it communist? I don't know. Was it socialist? Yes. But there is another explanation. It could equally have been a Calvinist thing. Calvinists and Jains are very similar. They don't mind you making money and running private businesses, but you're encouraged to use it for the common good. Not very different from the Mahajanapada concept that came up later, except the Mahajanapadas never became the high-end states that Harappa became. But you look at Switzerland, which was largely Calvinist and focused, well, I mean, parts of it were Calvinist and focused on this, giving to the public good. And the Jains who did that in Ahmedabad and places like that. Because remember, the most powerful people that we know, or we think we know in Harappa, were the trade guilds, because of all the trade seals and things like that that you find. So yes, it may have been, let's put it this way, I don't know if it was a utopia, but it was certainly a state where its citizens felt very safe, they were well looked after, and there was a great emphasis on human investment.
And viewers, before we jump to the next question, I have a small request. Can I have full screen, please? All right. This beautifully laser crafted Ganesha, 5 by 7 inches, 5 inches wide, 7 inches high, is something that we are giving away today for those who sign on for the $99 membership per month. You don't have to keep the membership on if you decide that you're not getting your value. But the cost of making that will at least underwrite more than half of what you're paying for the first month. So we urge you. This is a beautiful Ganesha. There's that tejas that comes from the face. And again, those of you who don't believe in murtis, please don't send comments saying that, look, you are selling religion. Nothing like that. This is something where we are trying to find additional sources of revenue to keep PGurus going. It is not easy. I also need to tell you that people like Abhijit like to come here because of the ideals for which PGurus stands for. We would like to keep those ideals, which means we don't want to toe any particular line for our news channels, and therefore please help us. And this product will also be available in sriiyer.com very shortly. We are working out some kinks in the back end of our software, but once that is up and running, you will be able to buy them. Once again, for those from the United States who are watching, this is available today if you sign up for the $99 slab. Thank you very much. Next question, please.
By the way, to be a Hindu is to be a capitalist. So if you have issues with people hawking their wares, you shouldn't be a Hindu at all. And if you're leftist, you can't be a Hindu. It's that simple. Very simple.
Hardik Thanki. With government offering massive incentive and Tata Group also hinting at huge investment in semiconductor sector, what are the chances of semiconductor manufacturing in India? We have huge annual demand for semiconductors in India.
See, I've seen hints, I've seen rumors. If they wanted to do something, they would have done it. The very fact that they've not tells you that they're not serious about these things. These are classic, they keep coming up with these big announcements. It's clearly not happening, because the way things happen in this country is that first Ambani announces his big green deal. When Modi made a throwaway announcement, he announced the big green deal, and that kind of forced Modi into then acquiescence at COP26 and things like that. So here, if the Tatas wanted to invest, they would have invested. If the government wanted to help them, it would have helped them. The Tatas no longer set the narrative in this country. Some big private houses can set the narrative which the government follows, but the government is incapable of setting that kind of a grand narrative and following it through, except at the extremely basic, rudimentary, lower politics level. Basic necessities, toilets, electricity, and things like that. These issues of high industrial strategic autonomy go above their wavelength.
Meghalaya. Have you been there?
Where?
Shillong, Meghalaya.
Why suddenly?
I'm just asking you a question. I have a follow-up question. Have you been there?
Yeah, I have, but long back.
Okay. I mean, is it connectivity?
No, I just went for a wedding and ate lots of pork and drank lots and came back.
No, why I'm saying is Shillong is one of the ideal places to establish a semiconductor plant because it requires a lot of electricity uninterrupted, requires a lot of water. And these two are available in plenty. Unfortunately, the talent will not be there. And that for that, people have to move from, say, Bengaluru or Hyderabad to go to Shillong. But
you can go to Uttarakhand.
Same place, same problem, right? I mean, talent is not there either.
Look, Uttarakhand, it is easier to get talent into Uttarakhand than it is to get people into Shillong.
Okay, so these are some of the places where, in fact, the previous semiconductor complex that actually burnt down was in somewhere between Chandigarh and Shimla. And I think this was 25 years ago, and the government just completely dumped it after that. They didn't do anything.
Yeah, they're not interested. They treat it like a joke. They don't have the vision to take it forward.
Actually, the semiconductor is one of the key pillars now. And I think Taiwan is trying to spread its risk by having 4 plants set up, one in India.
So I know for a fact that Taiwanese want to set it up in India. The problem is nobody wants to engage with them out here. So what do? Because half your ME is compromised to China. Like I said, every time I go to Beijing, they keep asking me, your ME is more loyal to us than our ME is to us.
Oh, well, interesting that Tata Motors, Mahindra dodge chip shortage with innovation. Okay. This whole
I'll believe it. I'll believe it when I see it.
Excuse me. This
How
is a funny name.
One contribute?
Go ahead.
How can one contribute to the Hindu community renaissance in the West without belonging to the social science department? Financially, yes, you can. No, not Canada. Canada is even worse. What I'd suggest you do is approach the University of Austin and get together a few friends and endow a scholarship for Hindu students from India, and for start investing so that you have a say in who runs the humanities department out there. All India studies should be funded by the Indian community so that they get a say on who runs it. Why does
Where does
Switzerland not suffer from the... Switzerland suffers from a very different gun problem. It has one of the highest gun suicide rates. Right. So, uh, yeah, so that's yeah. So Switzerland has a very different gun problem, but they do actually have a gun problem. You just don't have that problem of people going around mass shootings and things like that because they have an extremely good social service network as well, which prevents it. See, it's a question of scale also, na? A gun problem in a country of 300 million is going to be very different. You know, Canada has a higher rate of gun ownership than America, and yet far fewer gun problems. What is the population of Canada and what is the population of Switzerland? These are scalability issues, but Canada is kind of unique, probably because the density of population is much less, so the in-your-faceness is a lot less. In Switzerland, like I said, check out gun suicides and things like that, extremely high.
Next question, please. Mohanish Gunaga. I'm a civil engineering moving to US for second master's in business analytics. I must say it's due to Abhijit's daily pravachan that has inspired me to do this. Yay! My career in India sucked. Wish me and any tips.
Best of luck, Mohanish. Any tips? Yes. Don't make your political inclinations obvious. Keep your head down. Learn what you have to. Get into a place of power where you can hire and fire people, and then you can start showing all your political inclinations. Remember, leftists are more covert and insidious than anybody you will ever meet. If you see a leftist and a velociraptor, run from the leftist first, then run from the velociraptor.
Hardik Chanki again. How should India's defense ministry reform its weapons purchasing and manufacturing process?
We have discussed this so many times here. I'm not going to discuss this again and again and again. In this program, we've discussed it, what, 3-4 times now?
Yes, we have.
We've done in-depth on this.
Yeah. Hardik, try to come up with original questions. SSSS.
And please, yeah, and please come up with small questions because, you know, this is a whole podcast worth.
Somebody is asking you if Australia is a good country to pursue a computer science program master's degree.
Yeah, it's good. You can go there and do it. It's a very problem-solving oriented place. So, you know, when you're doing computer science out there, it's all focusing on problem solving. I think for the first year, if you've done an Indian education, you know, the thing is all your problem-solving abilities are crushed out of you. You just write what the teacher has told you to write rather than problem solving. Like even when you're solving a problem, you're following the steps you've been taught. You've been taught the how, you have not been taught the why. In Australia, they'll teach you the why. Because the low student to teacher ratio, they pay a lot of attention to each student. It'll be much better for you, yes. Of course, it depends on what you make of it in yourself.
Chaitanya Naidu wants to know, SS Menon believes that he doesn't understand CCP behavior even though young Chinese dance to Bollywood songs. How muddled and clueless that sort of thinking is by MEA. Who is SS Menon?
Shiv Shankar Menon.
But he's no longer in service now, right?
Well, thank God for small mercies. But yeah, it's a comment. I agree with it. I mean, there's no question here.
Next question, please. Niranjan, your thoughts on COP26 summit?
Excellent summit. Excellent summit. We got what we wanted. And where if you combine it with what the Ambanis have done in investing in EVs and in hydrogen vehicles as a redundancy measure and solar and storage technologies, excellent. It can give us that fillip. It can turn you into that manufacturing hub. Maybe even in spite of this government. It will be because of the Ambanis, not because of the government. But let's see, hopefully. I see it's in a very dark, grungy, smoggy environment. It gave me a ray of hope.
Just overall, Abhijit, aren't Ambani's excellent at execution?
They're amazing at execution. I've taken Russian engineers to that big Jamnagar refinery. You see them all glazed over. Imagine for a ex-Soviet engineer to fall in love with something and be awed by an thing of Indian engineering. That requires a feat, given the giant engineering projects they had in the Soviet Union. So they're extremely good. When they say something, they do it. Look at the phone coming out. Look at Geo coming out. They've been very, very good.
Mandar Karnik wants to know, can you go back to that question? Did capitalism and communism play off each other and lead to the tech advancement during the 50s to 80s? And will the new competition between China and the rest lead to a new tech advancement?
Uh, well, I wouldn't say capitalism. Look, there was a different interaction between capitalism and communism, which made both of them more ridiculous and doctrinaire. You'll find a lot of capitalist positions come just purely in opposition to communist positions, and similarly, a lot of communist positions come purely in opposition to capitalist positions. And that isn't a very good, because that is not a first principles ab initio way of thinking about things. So set that aside. There was then the competition between the USSR and the United States, which led to a lot of the technology advancements, which also led to the common market, which was the main driver of those technology innovations. There was also the major technology innovations before between the Axis and the, in fact, I would say the single biggest fillip to technology advancement was World War II, where all your things, missiles, jet aircraft, everything, sonar, all came about because of World War II, which is between Germany on one side and the USSR and USA on the other side. So that was more, keep the ideological competition separate from the geopolitical competition, which has always historically driven innovation. Now the thing is, why China isn't leading to all of this is because one side is innovating, the other side is merely copying. Copying is not innovation. The USSR came up with extremely unique products, all of its own, which America was not able to copy. Germany came up with its own products. The Allies came up with their own products. China copies. Big difference.
Next question, please. Kunal Srivastava recently visited Howrah and Srinagar. The hostility towards Hindus was more palpable in Howrah, Muslim dominated rural area, than in Srinagar. Is this due to Srinagar's dependence on local tourism?
I've never experienced this, so I can't really comment. I've personally never felt anything of the sort in Howrah. Srinagar, I felt it, so I've had a slightly different experience from you, but so I can't really comment.
My first shock when in Srinagar was in 1979, and I was buying coffee, and from bus stand has all these coffee shops, and in conversation the guy says, "आप तो India से आए हुए हैं." That was my first time. What the heck is this guy talking about? But the hostility was there in Srinagar. They wanted the money to stay in their hotels, but the rajais they gave used to be crap. They used to be smelly. Those days there was no heater, and we went in winter, believe it or not, to Srinagar in winter, and it was an experience. Go ahead. Next question, please. Shalab Pradhan, Pak people are regularly conducting Twitter spaces asking to balkanize India. They invite foreign journalists like Michael Kugelman. What are we doing about it?
Things don't get decided on Twitter. Don't worry about Twitter.
Shalab, Clubhouse is becoming quite popular these days. You can hear Abhijit quite often frequenting various conversations in Clubhouse.
Look. The point isn't that. The point is stop paying attention to small shit like this. Michael Kugelman isn't taken seriously by anyone. Okay, he's sitting there because his chair at the Woodrow Wilson this thing is funded by the Pakistanis. He manages to get in funding from the Pakistanis. That is the only reason he's there. Otherwise, nobody has ever taken him, nobody has ever accused him of being serious about anything. Okay, except India Today that gets him because he's only spare who's available to come onto their program, and he's Gora enough to be there. They need Gora faces, you know. That's about it. उसके सिवाय और कुछ भी नहीं है. So stop taking him seriously. He has zero clout in DC. Nobody listens to him in DC either. So it doesn't matter. As for what you can do, what exactly is Pakistan achieving with this? What you need to be doing is on the ground. Serious diplomatic actions, you know, funding universities and things like that, funding chairs, which also gives you the power to start interfering in other chairs who don't serve your purpose and things like that. Focus on that. Stop wasting your time and money on this crap.
Next question, please. Which is the better city, Mumbai or Delhi?
Vienna.
And why?
Nicer people, more culture, more history, prettier, better weather, better people, better food. Yeah, Delhi, Bombay, they're both filthy. I mean, I prefer Delhi to Bombay any day, but just because I prefer Delhi to Bombay doesn't mean Delhi is better than Bombay.
Shashank Sharma has a question. Delhi government is asking for a lockdown. Isn't it a stupid proposition to curb pollution as it will hurt the economy?
I agree. But you've seen what first of all, did you see the government submission in the Supreme Court today? You have to question the very scientific basis of a report which says that 90% of the pollution is from anything other than crop burning, when in fact the pollution, the smog only sets in when the crops are burning. Now, when the government itself doesn't know the scientific basis to make a report based on, and the Supreme Court comes up with its own idiotic paradigms, then what are you blaming the Delhi government for? It's a circle jerk of stupidity, starting from the very top.
Alan B.R. How does Shashi Tharoor speak English so well? It's a highfalutin English. It's not well English. Anyway, that's my comment. Yours.
Ask him. No, how am I meant to know? I've never been taken in by his language, but if you are, congratulations to you.
A lot of women are.
That's a bit overstated. I think they're more taken in by his charm and the sophistication of language. Well, the verbosity of language adds to it. But then you know what they say. It's like the emperor's new clothes syndrome. Anything that you don't understand, you find profound.
Interesting observation there. Next question, please. Malyaban Bhattacharya. There were reports of blasts within China. Did you see ETIM hand in it? If so, what do you think of PRC's response if it is traced to Pakistan?
The PRC, I have not heard of these explosions, so it'll be very good if you could please share links of this with me, but I'll Google it anyway. But don't worry, but this is interesting. I was not keeping tabs on this. It does not matter even if it gets traced back to Pakistan. China will not punish Pakistan. The Chinese have accepted that and they made this decision sometime in 2016, 2017. They made this decision that they will allow Pakistan to become a madhouse of terror, even if some of it refracted back onto them. Okay, so they've accepted that they will be occasional victims of etim freedom fighters and liberation activists. They're not terrorists. And those weren't explosions, incidentally. They were just celebrations of, I don't know, there were Eid celebrations, I guess. Yeah, they've accepted they will accept Eid celebrations and liberation activism as long as Pakistan is able to make terrorism that emanates from it geopolitically advantageous to China in other theaters.
Malibun, there is information about this blast in a hangout I did with Major Madan Kumar. It's on PGurus channel, so do look for Major Madan Kumar. We'll try and see if we can put it in show more section of this video. Let's go on to the next question, please.
Just to correct you, Shri, it wasn't a blast. It was a celebration of independence.
All right. There's an alternate perspective on that. Malyaban Bhattacharya wants another question. Do you foresee Manipur militants getting a bit aggressive? Also, what is the possibility of PLA using EMP weapons against IA,
Yeah,
Indian Army?
first, look, EMP weapons, yeah, please, yeah. You can't use EMP weapons. There's no demonstrable this thing of EMP weapons. Let's not even go there right now because this becomes like sci-fi and things like that. Manipur militants getting a bit aggressive. Yes, they warned us last year. The editor of Global Times warned us last year that they'd be doing something like this. You're seeing all the militants get more and more aggressive because they use the Burma route to supply all these militants. And from the information we're getting, they've been supplying them ever since Galwan happened. They've slowly been increasing supplies to them. And they're claiming very smartly that it's because of the Rohingya instability that arms are getting lost and finding their way to all these militants and things like that.
I'm curious, Abhijit, does India also try and give tit for tat in the same coin to countries like Pakistan and China?
Nay, we used to do it when Chidambaram was in charge. The moment this government took over, they destroyed the Baloch insurgency.
Hmm.
We discussed this, remember? It's one of those strange cases where P. Chidambaram was actually the patriot and the BJP turned out to be the traitor.
That's a good question. I mean, that's a good observation. Let's hope somebody from PMO is watching. Sahil Mahajan wants to know, how is the center so blind on the level of corruption by the bureaucracy and the BJP leaders in J&K post abrogation of 370? PS, I am from Jammu.
Well, you tell me, what are they not blind about, Sahil? It's bureaucrats running the show in Delhi. They're all one exam wonders. So tell me, what have they been unblind on? What is it that you feel that they were particularly perspicacious on, that they've been able to see through all these multi-layered, multi-leveled, multiplayer, multi-dimensional games? They've not. Why does it surprise you? That is my question. The government is doing what it's always done, which is play dead or be acutely clueless about most things.
Abhay Thakur wants to know, what are your thoughts about Jai Sai Deepak? Listening to him
He's a
see.
trad. Yeah, he is a trad. He's very much a trad. But he's one of the smart trads because he can actually justify his positions from first principles. He's not an idiot who goes, he said, she said, and nonsense like that.
A trad is what, a traditionalist?
Yeah.
Okay. Malyaban again, do you believe that had Sanjay Gandhi lived on, he could have consolidated Hindutva ideology strongly as compared to what BJP achieved in late 90s?
I honestly don't know the answer to that. See, these what if questions are very dangerous because he could have turned even more leftist, or he could have seen the tide turning. See, there's no predicting how he would have reacted because Hindu consolidation in itself only starts happening because of PV Narasimha Rao's liberalization. If Narasimha Rao hadn't liberalized, there would be no Hindu consolidation to begin with. Right? So it's very difficult to predict. The one good thing about Sanjay Gandhi, and the nation deserves to be eternally grateful to Sanjay Gandhi for this, is that the communists had supported emergency, hoping that they will take over all the avenues of power and they turn India into a communist state. He bloody bashed them black and blue and threw them in jail. And for that, every one of you should mention Sanjay Gandhi in your prayers. He literally prevented us from going further left.
Abhimanyu Mohite, are we going to see Pakistan collapsing like USSR with respect to economy? And what will happen in this region after Pakistan's economic collapse?
Are we going to see Pakistan collapsing? Look, Pakistan isn't collapsing in my lifetime, boss. There are more chances of India collapsing than there are of Pakistan collapsing. You seem to forget that India has an extremely weak government that is extremely lax on internal security, that has done nothing to consolidate the state's monopoly on violence. In Pakistan, when the state wants, they crack down like nobody's business. So Pakistan isn't going anywhere. So all these daydreams are fine as long as they remain daydreams.
Krishna Aital, suddenly Amit Shah finds Sufism a gift to India and Ram Madhav starts advocating secular credentials of Mujibur Rahman and Hussain Shahid Sohrawardi. Come on, that's a lie. Sohrawardi is a guy who orchestrated the 1946 riots in Kolkata. What the heck is Mr. Ram Madhav drinking or whatever? I don't know. Is BJP discovering virtues of becoming the new INC?
Becoming? Go to my timeline. I've been saying this for the last 5 years that Modi is Nehru 2.0. So it's only obvious that Amit Shah would then be what? Indira Gandhi 2.0? No. Rajiv Gandhi 2.0 maybe. Not even that. At least Rajiv Gandhi and Indira Gandhi were quite harsh on internal security. ये तो वो भी नहीं है. Maybe he become वो ये इसका बाप का नाम क्या था? महबूबा मुफ्ती का बाप?
मुफ्ती मोहम्मद सईद
जो होम मिनिस्टर था. हाँ, मुफ्ती मोहम्मद होम मिनिस्टर सईद था ना, तो अमित शाह बनेगा मुफ्ती मोहम्मद सईद 2.0.
You know, many of us don't remember this, but Mujibur Rahman was a direct acolyte of Suhrawardi. And Suhrawardi was the Prime Minister of Bengal when all those things were happening, and the British turned a blind eye to the massacre of Hindus that took place there. I mean,
to be fair, look. Okay. To be fair, Ram Madhav was justified in a sense in saying that. I'll tell you why. Because I've had this conversation with Ram Madhav, and he is always accepted that Suhrawardi and Mujibur Rahman were, once upon a time, they were absolute communal bigots. But growing up is a process. Tell me, do you believe the same things you believed 50 years back? 25 years back, I was a hardcore communist.
Hang on. Tell me what it is that Suhrawardi did that embellished his secular credentials.
So Suhrawardi to दूसरी बात है, but Mujibur Rahman made that transition. No? Suhrawardi lost his faith in the Pakistani state, which was the beginning step. There's lots of anecdotal evidence to suggest that he lost it, which is okay. It's still fine. Even the beginning of a realization is fine. I don't support the statement. That's a different matter. Okay, but it's at least based on some kind of logic that these guys came away from making it an Islamist state, as opposed to this dumb nonsense about Sufism.
I still can't believe that Indira Gandhi allowed 93,000 prisoners of war to just go scot-free and not even...
Well, she didn't have an option. No. It's a violation of the rules of war. You can't keep them prisoner. You can't negotiate.
No. You could have... You
can't. It's a direct violation of the Geneva Convention, yeah. You just can't. Once the battle is over, they have to be handed over. Full stop. They can't be used as a bargaining tool.
How did Israel occupy all those lands that they won in 67 war?
They occupied, but they had to give the soldiers back. Population
That's what I'm saying.
Soldiers are different.
I'm saying giving the soldiers back is fine, but India should have kept all the gains in the lands.
Why? And add 100 million more Muslims to your population.
Anyway,
Pakistan, I'm honestly telling you, the partition was a gift. It allowed Hindus room to breathe. I would not want to live in the mad hole that had Bangladesh and Pakistan as parts of India today.
Look, they should have done something similar to Nuremberg trials for all the genocide that was done, not just against Hindus, but also the Muslims of Bengal. What became East Pakistan?
That wasn't our mandate to do. Because that would have weakened Mujibur Rahman's control over this thing, because he had to show he was independent and not an Indian puppet. And by the way, we already overstepped our bounds, because remember the treaty we signed with Bangladesh essentially forced them into a subsidiary alliance. It was essentially almost word for word, it was like the subsidiary alliance system that the British imposed. what Bhutan, you can't take foreign policy decisions without us, etc., etc., etc. And that got him killed. That ultimately got him killed, and his whole family killed, in addition
Except
to
for
the
one.
famine and mismanagement and all of that.
Except for one.
Except for one.
Yeah.
Except for one. So, again, these are complex issues. There's no clear black and white on this.
Let's go on to the next question. Kshaya Arsha, right? Interesting name. Should we start addressing everyone in Hindi as aap to reduce class inequality in the society?
No, you start addressing everybody as two to reduce class inequality in society. Because it is
तू भी
not the
यार
poor people that need to
तू
be,
तू
it
भी
is not
यार
the
क्या
poor
बोल
people
रहा
that
है?
need to be elevated. It is the big people that need to be brought down. Okay, this is the genius of the English language. Once upon a time, English had, so in German, for example, you have the same up, same root, Germanic language, same grammar. So it was, for example, will you have a coffee? Tu coffee piyega kya paisa le? Is have to cafe. आप क्या कॉफी पियेंगे जनाब? Is haben Sie Kaffee? You used to have that in English. Willst thou have a coffee? Will you have a coffee? Informal, will you have a coffee? Formal, willst thou fancy a coffee? A drink of coffee. We got rid of it. We got rid of the thee, thou, all of that, and made it all you. Single. That was it. That was, it's one of the genius inventions of the English language to get away with this. So you don't want to add a notion of respect. You want to bring it all down.
Next question, please.
In fact, I am of the opinion that every Hindi sentence should end with the word sale. खाना खाएगा क्या साले? जाके नहाएगा क्या साले? जाके गाड़ी में चढ़ के ओला लेगा क्या साले? That's how it should end.
Pradeep Kumar Sadayappan, can you share what would be the ideal city planning? What India needs to do to get its cities to the mark? If long topic, please present in Charvak podcast.
It is a long topic. I think, yeah, that's a good idea. I should tell you what. Look, and I keep emphasizing this. Investment policies, defense policies, they're not about the technology, they're about the human being. And urban planning is about the human being. First, you need to have your projections in order. What is your growth rate? What is your skill rate? What is the disposable income going to be? What are the income projections going to be? What is the GDP going to be? What are the energy source transmissions you're going to have? What is the change in demographic you're going to have? What is the health projection for the next 30-40 years going to be? You plan a city backwards around all of these things. And then what you do, so in Delhi, for example, you have a lot of heritage zones, but unlike Europe, you don't have as much heritage as they do in Delhi. Wherein, there you would have whole centers of heritage. Whereas here you go into Chandni Chowk, you'll maybe have 1 out of 100 Havelis will be a heritage Haveli, the rest are all glorified slums, which can be demolished. So you actually have unique opportunities here for redoing the entire urban landscape. But what is an urban landscape? First and foremost, a great ease of living. Okay, your job is stress, but anything outside the job should not be stress. A commute should not be a stress. How do you ensure that? You ensure that by ensuring very orderly traffic and huge amounts of public transport. So that, and how do you ensure a huge amount of public transport? By keeping the transportation lines short, so compacting your cities. For a low density country, the solution is different. Right, so for Germany, you can have these little villages where everybody lives around. You can have some kind of urban spread, it's fine. For a city like Delhi, overpopulated metropolitan area of almost 70 million people like Delhi is almost the size of Germany in that sense. If you look at Greater Delhi, that now almost stretches up to Meerut in a sense, it's 70 million people. If you look at the urban spread, or even going into the peri-urban spread, it's 70 million people, almost the population of Germany. So you need compactness and you need height. You can provide an extremely high level of public services in this thing. You need to compact your schools and colleges. Remember, even admission procedures into schools and colleges are a part of urban planning. Right? Because depending on how many people get into college, because if you have 97, 98% cutoff rates, then a part of urban planning is to have community colleges that don't have that kind of cutoff rates, or trade and apprenticeship programs and things like that where people can go to when they don't get into college. See, all of this is a part of urban planning. It is a very, policy is extremely intersectional. Okay, we never do that. We siloize things so much. For us, urban planning is just roads, petrol stations, not even that sometimes. Like, you look at the way everybody marvels at all these metro stations. You tell me which of the metro stations planned for auto bays or car bays and things like that to be there, because everywhere you have a metro station you have a jam, because all the autos congregate on the side of the road and they slow down the traffic flow. So it's much bigger.
Next question from Karan Kaitan. What is the difference between Hinduism and Hindutva?
Simple. Hinduism is the religion, Hindutva is the political application of that religion.
Next question, please. Ian, how prepared is India against drone-centric warfare like Nagorno-Karabakh war?
Have you heard of the great Indian invention called Golgappa? That's how prepared we are. Golgappa.
You mean zero?
Zero.
Next
I think
question,
you can't even defend against civilian drones like DJI and Parrot coming from across the border and dropping firecrackers on your Air Force station. काय का ड्रोन प्रिपेयर्डनेस की बात कर रहे हो?
Abhijit, Krishna Aital, Abhijit, would you be able to be able to throw light on the contributions of Kerala School of Mathematics to further?
No, I won't. I'm sorry, I won't. You should get Bharadwaj Speaks, also known as True Indology, for this.
Oh, who is this guy? Bharadwaj Speaks. Do you know him?
I know, but I can't.
We seem to have momentarily lost him. Let's see if he comes back. And it's about an hour now since we've been having this podcast. Hopefully, yeah, he's back. Go ahead. So you don't want to disclose the identity. Understood.
I'm not allowed to.
Okay. Venkatrama Muthuswamy, what US reaction would you foresee now that Soviets started the delivery of S-400? What happened to Turkey's situation buying S-400? They got sanctioned.
First of all, India is not a treaty ally. Turkey is. Turkey had a commitment to not take on certain things. There are certain minimum requirements of a treaty ally. So Turkey was judged on a different standard. India is judged on a different standard. Okay. So what happened to Turkey may not happen to India, but given how clumsy and diffident India has been, it may just happen to India as well.
Next question, please. Abhay Thakur, do you think that Chidambaram is a great intellectual?
Chidambaram is a very smart man. He did a lot of bad things, but he also did a lot of great things. Notably setting Balochistan on fire.
There's a beep coming on. Is it something on your computer or something that you're running on?
Yes, that's my UPS because the current went off. That's why my screen blanked out for a minute because it was transitioning from Wi-Fi to...
I see. Let's keep going. Next question, please. Kaustup Kondapalle, I am new in Chennai. Any suggestions about food, tourist places and learning the language?
Don't bother with the language because the spoken language is different from the formal language. Just stick to English, it's fine. Though you're a Kondapalle, which means you're a Telugu, no? Golti, no?
Right.
You should be able to manage with Golti, man. Like, big deal. Just manage. And the food, yes. Start off with something tame like Anjapar. And once you're... and Madurai Tiffin House. And once you are... क्या कहते हैं, a bit confident with moving around Chennai, start going to all the smaller shops and things like that. There is a food channel called Irfan's View. It's this fat chubby guy called Irfan who goes around to all these holes in the wall. And remember, the holes in the wall in Madras are where you get the best food. So go there and follow him. I mean, he does have a very non-veg focus. But if you're looking at vegetarian stuff, uh, I personally prefer Sangeeta to Sarvana Bhavan. And the things you must try in Sangeeta are the idli Manchurian and the idli 65. The dosa, Bangalore makes better dosa, so there's no point comparing that. But the curd rice, the sambar rice, and things like that, you'll find it much better in Chennai. Remember, the real capital of Tamil food is not Chennai, it is Madurai. You want good food, you go to Madurai. Okay, Chennai is a bit of a yuppie, shishi, low income, become high income in the last 10 years kind of, not really people you want to associate with kind of place. So it's quite low class in that sense, in terms of culture. So it's fine. But and your 5-star restaurants, I've never been big on 5-star restaurants anyway. So वो सब kind of bakwas hai. But the tourism is, there's lots. You go to all the museums, make a list of all the museums, you will find amazing things in Tamil, the museums in Chennai have a better collection. The Fort St. George Museum, the old museum in T Nagar, is it T Nagar near the old metro station, the other railway station? What is that? This thing?
Railway, Central Park. Is it? Are you talking about Park Station or Egmore? Egmore.
Egmore Station. Near Egmore Station, there's that museum complex. There, you get truly amazing stuff. They actually have original stuff from Harappa, Mohenjo-daro out there. They have Chora bronzes. They have a wonderful collection of Chora bronzes and things out there. Definitely worth seeing. The great thing is you have a great beach culture, so you can go driving south from Mahabalipuram and all of that all to Pondicherry and beyond. In fact, if you go past Pondicherry, once you hit the place where Sri Lanka starts, the water becomes almost like a Maldivian beach, and there's nobody bathing out there. So you can go to places like that and things like that. You can go up to the hills to go. I prefer Kodaikanal to Ooty, but sure, go to Ooty as well. It's just, there's a lot of things to do, either within a day's drive or within a weekend's flight trip kind of thing, within that state. So do it. Go to the Kerala border, go from Coimbatore to say Palakkad, nice, beautiful, lush green stuff. You've got Top Slip and places like that where you get lots of wildlife. Just go check it out, man. It's like a good place.
Nikki Nair.
And by the way, one of the best things you can do from Madras day trip is go watch a rocket launch at Sriharikota. So you have to drive about 2 hours north. It's amazing going just before parking your car just before the causeway. There's lots of good restaurants in the villages before that. Pack some food, go there just in time for the launch, and you can sit there eating your chicken 65 or idli sambar or vada sambar and watching the rocket go up. And incidentally, there's also beautiful waterfalls around Sriharikota, and there is an amazing bird migration park out there. So ask people around. When migration season is happening, it is one of the most spectacular concentration of migratory birds that you'll see. So waterfalls, migration, rocket launches, all within 2 hours of Chennai. Of course, if you're on the beach or if you come to my house's rooftop, you're not invited, by the way, but just in case you were, you can actually see the rocket launch from my rooftop.
Next question from Nikki Nair, to both of us. What are your thoughts about Henry Kissinger's diplomacy? How did he successfully lobby the creation of petrodollars, or did he?
Look, Henry Kissinger is his own creation. The greatness of Henry Kissinger is the creation of Henry Kissinger. Okay, his diplomacy was no great shakes. Okay, this is a classic case of, where people boast about themselves, they create an ecosystem that boasts about them, and therefore you think they were great. With the benefit of hindsight, Henry Kissinger would be a footnote in history. And that's it. Nothing more, nothing less.
Next question, please. I don't have anything to say about Henry Kissinger. I don't know enough. So, Rohit Chavan, is worthwhile to study and join Indian Foreign Service?
If you don't have any prospects in life, then join Indian Foreign Service. I can tell you, Indian Foreign Service is better than becoming a chaprasi or something like that. But if you actually value, if you are confident about your future and you think you can earn money and do something worthwhile with your life, then don't join Indian Foreign Service.
Raftar Patel, who is behind Purulia arms drop and the real intent?
I don't know now. I've forgotten. I used to know. It is too late in life to remember all that. I'm an
Next
old
question.
man now, despite my youthful looks.
Abhijit, how are you able to retain info for a long time? Because I tend to forget in 2 days. Do you think violent groups like B Dal put dirt on image of RSS? Bajrang Dal.
No, Bajrang Dal has a function within the system. Every country needs an intelligence service. Every good man needs a thug. Bajrang Dal needs the RSS needs its thugs.
You still have about 10 questions. Do you think you have time for that?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
But let's finish it at 10 questions.
Yeah, last 10 questions. That's it. And if anything spills over, it will be done in next week. Aryan Bhagat, solution to the radicalization problem in Kashmir. People say it is a gone case and can only be settled by changing demographics. Is it that bad?
Correct. It is. Yes, it is correct. And you have to change the demographics. Yes, it is. There's nothing you can do about it.
Mohit Dandekar, how to manage? Didn't Israel successfully do this thing, reverse it?
Where?
In Palestine?
Did you see the last set during the rocket attacks 2-3 months back? Far from not managing radicalization in the West Bank and Gaza, Israeli Arabs started rioting. And this is something nobody thought that Israeli Arabs would ever start rioting. Israeli citizen Arabs started rioting. So they have not managed it at all.
All right. Next question, please. Last 9. Mohit Dandekar, how to manage being circumspect about one's opinion when caught between wokes and trads and the combination of both given increasing polarization?
So Mohit, this depends on your position. Are you in a position where they can damage your financial prospects or your career and things like that, in which case you shouldn't be giving your opinion at all. Just keep your head down and do your work. If you are in a position where they are not in a position to damage you, why are you getting caught between them? You should be shitting on both of them. You should be shitting on the wokes and you should be shitting on the trads, because they're both not worth the hot air that they produce. है ना? So either bend down and mind your own business, or if you're taking them on, spit on both of them.
By the way, I have seen one way to get out of these tricky situations is to say, I don't know enough about this subject to offer an opinion. Leave it at that.
But he asked, his question was based on the fact that he'd already proffered an opinion, which is why I said don't offer an opinion.
That's right. So, Kiran Prabhu, do
see, opinions are the luxury of the rich.
Kiran Prabhu, do think tanks and research institutes carry out any type of espionage, even unofficially, for data gathering from overseas?
They're basically open source intelligence gathering organizations. Because remember, open source intelligence gathering is called primary research. When it is covert, it is called espionage. So all think tanks and research institutes are essentially open source research. You do not do duplicitous things. You do it openly and yeah, it works.
Hey, I have a question for you before we go to the next question from the viewer. There was news that a very high-ranking army official got his computer wiped out and his phone completely wiped out. Do you?
I don't know about it, no.
Okay, next question, please.
It doesn't surprise me because Indian cyber hygiene is non-existent. But yeah,
Next question,
it's
please.
possible.
Tutul, which is the best country to move to be free from left, feminism, wokeness, or any shifts like Me Too, where I can work against them without getting cancelled, where laws are not biased or shitty?
North Korea. You're not going to get any of this stuff in North Korea. But look, uh, everything is a balance. You can move to France, but there's a pushback against all this shit. The question is, how long will your cultural adjustment take out there? If you only find yourself easy moving to the Anglophone, see, the more Anglophone the country, or the more Anglo aligned the country in terms of language. So, for example, Scandinavia has gone mad because everybody in Scandinavia speaks English. France and Italy have not gone mad because not many people speak English out there. Right? So, the question is, what exactly? It's a matrix. You value quality of life, the quality of flats, what can your money buy, living standards, disposable income that you get for your expected job versus all of this crap.
Mohanish P. Gunaga, Abhijit and Sri, tips to cultivate thinking from first principles and critical thinking in our professions to make good advancement in one's career.
I've answered this question before. I can't teach you how to think from first principles. It's basically meeting a lot of people that keep stimulating you and pushing you towards first principles. There's no way of training the mind that I know of.
Couple of tips on this, Mohanish. One is that you need to be able to focus, and you can't focus all through the day. That is also difficult. So you need to be able to focus when you need to focus, and then switch off that, and then be normal. And this is a technique that for each one they have to find what it is that they seem to feel comfortable. But I'll just give you a simple math. In a 24-hour period, we get 40,000 thoughts in our mind. 40,000, 40. If you can reduce that, that means you are able to focus. So, how do you do this thing? Sometimes you see that your mind is wandering on things past or future or situations. To try and see if you can cut yourself off from those things. Essentially, it is discipline. And you could find that if you just close your eyes and take deep breaths for about 20 seconds, suddenly you seem to feel more calm, and that might be your mantra. You have to find this for yourself, but it is certainly doable. I've had success.
So that's never worked for me. The more agitated I get, the better I think.
To each their own, my friend. That's why I didn't say this is
To
the
each their own.
panacea. Venkat
Exactly.
wants to know, how come British industrialized USA and not India?
The British didn't industrialize the USA. USA industrialized itself. The British industrialized Bengal. Nehru deindustrialized Bengal in 5 years. Right? So the British didn't industrialize America. Period.
Oh, by the way, to know more about how USA got industrialized, read a book called Hot Property, HOT Property. It's about intellectual property and the initial intellectual property wars that used to take place between the two developed economies at that time. One was still developing, which was US, but it was developing very fast, and Britain tried its best to hide some of the more compelling inventions and things like that, and how the United States found ways to get at those things so that it could also start play catch up. Very interesting book. Next question from Prakar Dangwal. Why do many people have a romantic and flimsy notion of pre 2014 India? They think that after 2014 everything has started to go down.
Yeah, because their party was in power, no? You tend to think things are better when your party is in power. That's it. And it was better for them. They could get Padma Shris for doing squat. All they had to do was have a Birkin bag or a Christian Dior lipstick and be on TV, and you'd get a Padma Shri, Padma Vibhushan, God knows what. So it genuinely become bad for them, no?
Next
They
question,
used to get
please.
appointed to the national advisory committee based on just spewing hot air and being a walking, talking biogas plant. Today they can't. So obviously it's become worse for them. It's obviously become
Krish,
intolerant of their point of view.
yes, yes. Krishna has a good question for you. Abhijit, have the current Bengalis forgotten about the horrors of partition of 1947? I find many of them secular to a fault. You are an exception, but that could be because of your Tamil roots.
No, no. It's the sheer fear and suppression that has happened since the communists took over. Remember, the communist takeover was about economics, and when they couldn't deliver economically, they made it about identity and they crushed out. They taught out. They suppressed the traditional memories. We see, my family left Bengal. My dad was born in Jabalpur. Sorry, my dad was born in Jaipur, and then they shifted to Jabalpur when my grandfather died. So it was a very different. The Bengalis who left Bengal, who didn't get brainwashed by being leftist and things like that, still remember it. But Bengal itself got completely brainwashed during those 30-40 years of communist rule. No? So what could you do?
Next question from Rajat Sharma. Both Sri and Abhijit, how bad is inflation going to become in US? Could it lead to massive job loss?
Yes, I agree. It's going to get a lot worse. Keep waiting and watching.
Yeah, right now some of the pricing is going uncontrolled, especially gasoline pricing, and that is the bedrock of a lot of the other goods pricing. And once that starts going up, everything else will start going up disproportionately. So we are in 2022 is expected to be a bad year in the United States, and that could also bounce off onto other countries.
See, Rajat, the other thing you should remember is it's a road and uh, fossil fuel based economy. Okay, they don't have trains transporting, citrus from Florida and things like that. That's done through refrigerated trucks and so on and so forth. Now, petrol may be cheaper in some parts, but once you get to California, which is your biggest market and things like that, going back, you have to pay Californian prices for fuel going back. So there's all kinds of things that is leading to the cost. It's little things. So for example, pork and chicken farmers have to provide minimum space now, additional minimum space, which means pork products and chicken products, all protein products, have gone through the roof prices. Okay, because fuel prices rise, it affects everything else. American cities are planned for a car commute economy. They're, like we've discussed before here in short, American cities are completely unsustainable, including places like San Francisco, San Diego, LA, and things like that. Thoroughly unsustainable cities. The entire urban planning there is unsustainable. So when that fuel goes through, every household has to pay 5 6 what petrol is now $7 in some places. No,
It's
it
now
used to be $1 or
$5 a
something like that.
gallon. $5 a gallon.
It used to be $1 a gallon once upon a time. No?
Yeah. The crude is
That
still at
that's
only
see that's
80. Yeah.
that's 500% increase of your fuel budget right there for the same distance you're traveling.
Yes.
Right. So the knockdown effects are massive, and you link this back to the question that was asked at the beginning of this session: how does the government of India calculate fuel prices? At least, as stupid as it is, at least the Indian government is calculating based on expected revenue. Here they're doing price just to be punitive without looking at the knockdown cost. So in that sense, when they say you go woke, you go broke, India is a third world economy full of third rate people at the decision making level. California is becoming a third world economy with third rate people at the decision making level, as are a lot of other states, incidentally.
Next question. How is it that the 18th and 19th century produced philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche and we don't have any in India? What about Aurobindo? Education system in India does not even lay emphasis on
Yeah.
philosophy. What about Vivekananda?
Or, yeah, we had very good, decent philosophers.
Yeah.
Right. You need to remember, in Europe, theology and philosophy split. In India, they never did. So people that you think as godmen were actually very profound philosophers. They aren't accepted as that because they wore the religious garb, whereas Nietzsche did not. That said, I have to tell you, I find some of the late European philosophers to be honestly extremely boring.
And that's it for today. And we'll be taking up remaining questions next week. Abhijit, as always, a heartfelt thanks for joining this program. And we are trying something in 2 weeks' time, something different, innovative. Let's see if we can pull it off. We're going to try and do it live when I'm in New Delhi. And let's see how that goes. Abhijit, as always, thank you very much, bro. And we'll see you next week, same time, same location. Namaskar.
Well, very well.